Okay, board, do I have a motion to return to open session?
Second.
Mr. Roberts and Ms. Bond, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to certify closed session that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered?
Second.
Ms. Bond and Dr. Roundtree? Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to long-term suspend student A to the end of the 2026 academic year?
Second.
Ms. Franklin and Dr. Gitchery, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Bond and Mr. Roberts, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
No.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. Now we'll move on to our MCPS mission and belief statement. Our student representative tonight is Avi Gandhi from Christiansburg High School. Avi, will you please read our mission and belief statement?
Yes, ma'am. So our mission is MCPS is an innovative educational community. We value diversity and we are committed to equity and inclusion. MCPS empowers learners to realize success in an ever-changing global society through collaboration with communities, families, staff, and students. MCPS provides a safe, engaging learning environment and intentional exposure to positive social, emotional, and academic experiences. Now our beliefs. 1, all students can learn in order to pursue their dreams. 2, schools are safe places of joy, wonder, and creativity. 3, every person deserves to be loved, valued, and respected. 4, kindness is an essential skill of a responsible, productive community member. 5, the diversity of our community is one of our greatest strengths. 6, all people deserve equitable access to opportunities and resources. 7, every child deserves an advocate. 8, honoring the voices of students and other stakeholders strengthens the school community. 9, open communication and feedback are vital to our growth. 10, learning and teaching are collective efforts that begin at birth and involve the entire community. 11, relationship building and high expectations are foundational to student success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avi. So now we'll move on to the approval of a contract and the announcement for a new superintendent. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Dr. Roundtree, would you read the resolution?
Yes. Whereas there is a vacancy in the Office of Division Superintendent, and whereas the school board wishes to appoint Dr. Kelly Gimple as Division Superintendent for a term commencing February 1st, 2026 and ending June 30th, 2029, now therefore be it resolved that Dr. Kelly Gimple is appointed Division Superintendent for a term commencing February 1st, 2026, and ending June 30th, 2029, and be it further resolved that the chairperson and clerk are authorized to execute an employment agreement with Dr. Gimple for a term commencing February 1st, 2026, and ending June 30th, 2029, a copy of which is attached.
Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce you all to Dr. Kelly Gumple. He brings 31 years of experience in education to Montgomery County, most recently as Chief of Schools in Spotsylvania County, where he also served in 2 stints as interim superintendent. Dr. Gumple's passion for education and devotion to students and their success will benefit everyone at MCPS. And thank you, Dr. Gumple, for being with us here tonight. Please come up and say a few words.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to try and maintain here with the excitement I have that's kind of been going on for the last couple of weeks and just bubbling up here. We had such a great day today, traveling throughout the county. We met with a realtor, and it's just so excited. Well, Chair Purcell, Vice Chair Roundtree, members of the board, first I just want to acknowledge my faith that guides me and to thank my beautiful wife, Layla, in the audience here, who is my #1 supporter and always has been. Getting to a position of superintendent, you cannot get there without support. And she is absolutely my backbone. So thank you so much, Layla. I want to thank the board. I know the process of selecting a superintendent is perhaps the most important thing that a school board takes on. And I know it was arduous. I know that you took your time. I was so impressed with both interviews, the questions, the quality of questions, the depth of your questions, and really trying to seek and find the right person. And your perseverance and diligence truly reflects your care and your love for the school division. So thank you. It makes this so much more honorable, and I'm so much more proud because of the process that you embarked on. I do want to say that that there's several things that I am very strong on, and these are my 3 core things: is really creating schools where our students want to be there every single day and working hard to make sure that happens. They have to be the focus of all of our efforts, making sure that our teachers are valued and validated for the expertise that they have, and making sure that our parents are really part of the equation and understand exactly why we do the things that we're doing within our schools. Over the next 90 days, the plan is to listen. The plan is to learn as much as I possibly can, meet with as many people as I possibly can, and just be a sponge. And I cannot wait to get started. Like I said, we've already kind of gotten our temporary place to stay until we find a real home to live in. We've already got that set up, and hopefully this snowstorm just blows by and it's easy travels back and forth. But you'll be hearing so much more. I can't wait to get in our schools. Can't wait to work with our children and work with our teachers and principals and our staff. I am beyond excited and honored, and thank you so much for selecting me.
Thank you, Dr. Gumple. So I would like to take a brief recess. We have some documents that we need to sign. And just to give everybody a quick opportunity to say hello. Unfortunately, the Gumples can't stay for our entire meeting, but I'm sure you'll be watching later, later on. So,
Yeah, and just quickly to also quickly recognize people that you'll be working with. The Board of Supervisors is back here, or a large portion of the Board of Supervisors is back here in the back.
Can't wait to work with you as well. I'm really looking forward to that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and thank you all for attending and welcoming our
Yes, thank you so much.
our superintendent.
Okay.
Kind of have to go around back and then. Microphone still doesn't work.
No, we've got a meeting we need to reconvene.
I'm into brevity.
Okay, here we go.
I have to teach it and I have to grade it.
You held him longer than a handshake, so it is your fault.
Oh, sure.
Goodness. Oh, please.
Talk more later.
Glad to have you all here, but no offense, but we would like to get home sometime before tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Is secure temporarily right now. So, and we knew.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that we don't love. Nothing was holding us here.
Okay. Here we go.
I was like nervous. You got like 2 seconds to tell them what you're working on.
She said this is the only one.
It's cold in here.
Okay. Our next agenda item is public address. We welcome the opportunity to hear from students, parents, employees, and community members about education matters in this community. As a reminder, the board sets aside 30 minutes to start our public address. We have the option to extend in 30-minute increments, which Ms. Osborne will remind us of. If there are additional speakers after 90 minutes, the board will continue with their business meeting and hold one additional 30-minute session at the end of the business meeting. The clock continues through applause and disruptions. The more disruptions there are, the fewer speakers who get to address the board. I call up each speaker by name in the order that they signed up. Each speaker has 3 minutes to address the board. The board does not respond to speakers during public address. The screens show when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining and when time is up. However, we have no one signed up for public address this evening, so we will move on to the next agenda item. Okay, so now we'll move on to consent items. If no one wishes to move an item out of consent, we will consider these items approved. The next item is the financial summary report. Do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the financial summary report for December 2025?
Second.
Ms. Franklin and Mr. Roberts, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin,
Yes.
Dr. Guidry,
Yes.
Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll move into our business meeting, and our first item is,
We have payment of bills.
oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead, I'm sorry. The next item is the payment of the bills for fiscal year 2025, 2026. Do I have a motion to approve the payment of bills as
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Guidry and Mr. Roberts? Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin,
Yes.
Dr. Guidry,
Yes.
Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Okay, now we'll move into our business meeting, and the first item on the agenda is a report from the superintendent. Dr. Amanda Widener will provide a report from the superintendent. Thank you, Dr. Widener.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. In Dr. Graham's absence, I'm pleased to be here this evening, serving as the superintendent's representative. First and foremost, I would like to begin by congratulating Dr. Gimple on his approval as our new superintendent. As a team, we look forward to welcoming him to MCPS, and we're excited to begin working with him when he officially starts on February 1st. I know our entire school division is eager for his leadership and partnership. Mid-January marks several significant events in our school division. Yesterday, we observed Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is a time to reflect on the life and legacy of Dr. King and his unwavering commitment to civil rights and racial equality. This holiday and observance closely aligns with our mission, which emphasizes the value of diversity and maintaining a commitment to equity and inclusion for all students and staff. January also marks the start of the second semester, offering our students a fresh and focused beginning to the new year. This time of year is especially important as students begin planning for the next school year. Beginning last week and continuing into early February, all of our middle school and high school schools will host academic and career planning nights. These events provide valuable opportunities for students and families to learn about course offerings and programs as they consider their academic pathways for next year. This month has also provided numerous opportunities for our staff to learn and grow professionally. During our work days earlier this month, staff members participated in a variety of sessions, some focused on curriculum and instruction, some on classroom management and behavior, others support safety and mental health services. I would like to highlight a unique professional learning opportunity that many of our administrators participated in during the first week back from winter break. The Blacksburg Police Department hosted a tabletop exercise to address a hypothetical crisis on a school campus. This collaborative effort included school-based administrators, central office staff, law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical personnel. I was fortunate to be one of the MCPS members who participated in this event, and I found it extremely beneficial. The exercise allowed us to problem solve together, identify strengths, and pinpoint areas for continued improvement. The timing of this event was helpful because these discussions continued in a school safety meeting the following week. But most importantly, this experience underscored the strong partnerships we have with local law enforcement and emergency responders. And it demonstrates our collective efforts that support the safety of our schools, our students, our staff, and our communities. Beyond the classroom, there's a great deal happening across our school division in the coming weeks. Our winter athletic teams are actively competing in regular season games and tournaments. The opening of our new GoTech Career Connections Lab at CMS will happen later this month. Winter is a busy and exciting time for fine arts with district choir and band performances taking place across the county. Students and staff are also preparing for upcoming events, including the VT Honor Band, 5th grade All-County Choir, All-County Honors Art, and performance assessments. And finally, I would like to draw the board's attention to the document that is included in the agenda under the superintendent's report. This document provides additional information for you on driver's education behind the wheel instruction programs, which Dr. Comer introduced and spoke to you about on October 21st. As the board considers whether this type of program should be added to the division's budget in the future, this document does include feedback from Region 6 school divisions regarding how they use that program and how they implement it. It also includes results from a recent student and parent interest survey that we gave to all of our current 9th grade students and parents. And then there is some more information regarding the calculation of costs. So that is for information for you as you may want to look at and consider that program going forward. So lastly, as we look ahead to the upcoming weeks, we remain focused on providing engaging learning opportunities, ensuring safe and supportive school environments, and celebrating the many accomplishments of our students and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Widener. We'll move on to our MCEA update. Katie Seidemann, MCEA President, will present an update from the Montgomery County Education Association. Thank you, Ms. Seidemann.
Good evening, Chair Purcell, Dr. Widener, and members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to present your report on behalf of the Montgomery County Education Association. First, on behalf of the MCEA, I would like to welcome and congratulate Mr. Roberts on your new position as school board member. Thank you for serving on the board, and we are looking forward to working with you. Also, on behalf of the MCEA, I would like to welcome and congratulate Dr. Gimple on his appointment as superintendent. We look forward to working together very soon. Secondly, I would like to thank the board for approving the MOU regarding the extension to our current collective bargaining agreement for certified staff, which will now expire June 30th. This will allow the board and the MCEA additional time to work with our newly hired superintendent during negotiations and will provide a more practical implementation timeline for our administration. Next, I would actually like to extend a thank you to Dr. Brewster for his collaborative work in creating a new MCPS recruitment flyer for upcoming job fairs that include information about our collective bargaining agreements for staff. He has shared with us that there has been a lot of interest in MCPS from potential employees because of our work with the CBAs, and we are so excited to be able to use these agreements to assist with recruitment and retention of quality staff. We knew this would be one of the positive outcomes of having these agreements, and we are thrilled to see it become a reality. Next, regarding the newly proposed alternative education program to be housed at Montgomery Central. The MCEA is in full support of any policy that aims to provide restorative behavior services to students facing challenges at school. We are also very much in support of keeping students in school as much as possible. Trust me, no one is more aware of how much material a student has missed than their teacher. Many board members have already voiced these concerns. However, I would also like to reiterate two specific concerns. First, as I've said, we all know the importance of students being physically present in class. However, sometimes there are students that are not ready to be back in class due to their behavior. And allowing them back into the classroom before they're prepared to accept those expectations does nothing to serve that student or the dozens of other students in that class. We were very glad to see in the plans for this program included specific requirements for students based on their behavior to return to school. And we would just ask that the administration continue that collaboration and support of the building staff when making decisions regarding a student's return to school. So thank you for including those. Secondly, in discussing the expectations of the students' classroom teachers, specifically the work to be sent to the students in this program, we would ask that specific and thoughtful considerations be taken regarding the workload placed on the classroom teacher. Sometimes there are lessons that cannot be replicated outside of the classroom, and the onus should not be placed on the classroom teacher to teach the same instruction or level of content to a student who is not there. We have had some very positive discussions with Dr. Widener surrounding this topic. With the addition of a licensed educator specifically placed at that program, we're hopeful that collaboration can take place easily and seamlessly between all educators. However, we want to make very clear to the board and to administration that any additional work created from participation in this program by students in a classroom teacher's class should not cause any excess stress or time to any staff member. Moving on, as the board begins your budget conversations, I would just like to summarize the MCEA budget priorities just as a reminder. 1, the MCEA fully supports a salary increase for all employees, including hourly and part-time. 2, we are requesting no increase in healthcare costs for the upcoming year. 3, keeping front of mind the health and safety of all staff and students, specifically regarding the hiring of paraprofessionals and providing adequate and appropriate supplies for daily expectations of each position. 4, the continued use of the RIHIT program. And 5, the consideration of exploring a paid parental leave policy for all employees. Lastly, I shared the MCEA calendar priorities for the 26-27 school year at a previous meeting. And we have also been discussing the work of the calendar committee with Dr. Widener and Dr. Graham. And we're feeling very positive about the work that has come out of the committee. As you begin your calendar discussions, we ask that you give significant consideration to the diligence and care with which the committee has created the proposed calendars, and respect the choices that they have made regarding the calendar as a board-designated committee. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or clarifications regarding the MCEA's position on the calendar. Are there any questions that I can answer for you now? Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Seidman. Okay. Moving on, we have a supplemental appropriation. Do I have a motion to authorize a supplemental appropriation to the 2025-2026 school capital improvement budget in the amount of $5,095,650?
So moved.
Ms. Bond and Ms. Franklin, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Next up is our Sodexo mid-year presentation. Michelle Knotts, Supervisor of School Nutrition, and Ben Montgomery, General Manager for Sodexo, will present an update on Sodexo's food service.
Make sure I got this. Okay. First and foremost, thank you for allowing us to present to you this evening. We wanted to go ahead and start off our presentation here. This will be our first slide, and we'll go to our second. The first thing we wanted to touch on is our student engagement piece. One new thing that we've done this year is Sodexo has used their regional RDs to go ahead and create a really fun curriculum called Bite Science that we have for the kids. This curriculum is really put into 3 different buckets: an educational content, interactive activities, and if the time is pending, we put together fun meals that are themed around what we are doing for that specific event. The last one that we were able to do at Blacksburg High School was a pumpkin puree parfait, because it tied into the theme for that month, which is powerful pumpkins and the benefit and the nutritional value of doing that. And as you can see from the pictures, we had a fantastic time. We pulled in our regional registered dietitian who was involved with this program with all the other RDs across the country to really help facilitate that. And it was fantastic. The kids really enjoyed it. And we'll continue doing this. We actually have one coming up on February 23rd and 24th. The big updates we really wanted to go over is we're continuing doing our Big City Bites promotion. These are baked into our menus. These are great limited time offers that Sodexo does offer. We're continuing to do our chef demos. Some new programs that we have done this year is a cool event called Crunch Herd Around the Commonwealth. This is put on by the VDOE, and it's during the Farm Week. I'm sorry. It's the Farm to School Week that we have in October. And the idea behind it is really just to highlight all the local farmers in Virginia, and we got quite a bit of them. All the districts across the state are asked to participate in this event, and the entire idea behind it is that we get local produce, we chose apples, and that everybody takes a bite of this apple at the same time all across the state of Virginia, and if you listen closely, you can hear a crunch. Chances are, no one's doing it at the same time, so you're probably hearing crunches at all times of the day. But we had a fantastic time. We were able to work with our vendors, get some local apples in, and we launched this program. I wanted to point out a couple things on this one. Eastmont Elementary is able to get all their students out there. We supplied all the apples, and we had a fantastic time. You can see on this, it's not a scissor lift, but the lift we have Andrew Webb, which is our communications director out there, and he was able to get up on this thing, and I was telling Michelle earlier, not all heroes wear capes, because that's must be 50, 60, 70 yards up there. We also did a different program, and I'm going to kind of bounce around here. Was called Can the Principal, and this is something we partnered with Dr. J up at Blacksburg Middle School. We were actually able to get, or they were able to get over 1,000 cans with Dr. J's leadership. The staff at Blacksburg Middle School is incredibly helpful and engaged, as well as the community up there. And Sodexo does this program. It's brand new. We piloted it here, and we have another department within our organization called Sodexo Stop Hunger. And they're really interesting. That's exactly what it is that they go ahead and they find partnerships with other organizations with the goal of stopping hunger. So they asked us to go ahead and pilot this, and we did. It was very successful. And the Sodexo Stop Hunger part of our company was able to partner with a local moving company. What made this unique is that moving company has vans all across the country, and they were actually able to come and move all this food for us. And that was kind of, that was the pitch, that was the highlight about this. And they were able to move it all over to Micah's Backpack in Blacksburg. We did do some new entrees because we did get our student survey feedback, and the previous one needed to focus on taste. That's where we had a lot of opportunity. So some of the things we did to address that is we offered an entire new array of entrees from chickpea biryani, summerberry crunch salad, hot honey pizza, Thai chicken and pineapple fried rice, pumpkin penne Alfredo, and even a pumpkin pizza. We did launch another survey in December for both parents and students. We're waiting for that information and data to be compiled and sent to us from the folks who helped us facilitate that above us. And we're also launching a new one in April, and that'll be a continued cadence that we'll keep doing. We successfully opened CHS Kitchen, which is an absolutely beautiful kitchen. And I think that's all the things I need to touch on these ones. For recruitment and retention, we still are running our Sodexo's Operation Leadership Academy, which has proven successful. We've been able to actually elevate one of our frontline workers into a new management role at one of our schools. We're continuing to use our DEXI recruitment tool. We credit this tool to our success when it does come to recruitment, and currently we're at 87 out of 90 employees. We're continuing to do our Employee of the Month, and we've also are going to be implementing something a little different. As we had one situation in 1 month where there's just too many employees being highlighted, and that's a fantastic thing to have. And we recognize all of them, but we wanted to expand this program to include our Team of the Month because they work hard, they deserve it, and we want to make sure that they're getting that recognition for this program. And then we're still offering referral bonuses for any of our employees who want to earn some extra cash and know some folks who are interested in coming and working with us. And as a look ahead, Future Chefs is coming on March 20th. I believe we have 2 judges ready to rock and roll for that. So we're looking forward to seeing you guys there. We wanted to continue our focus on breakfast cart implementation and growing our participation. Last year we implemented 2, and this year we have gotten up to 5. And that is a continued focus that we're looking at moving forward and continuing doing where it makes sense. We touched on this a little bit last year, and it looks like we're kind of dealing with it a little bit this year, but the mitigation of the weather impact and how we're going to approach that, what our strategy is behind it. Just to kind of put in perspective, every day we're out of school, and I know you guys probably deal with this too with attendance and everything else, is we lose about $32,000 in revenue lost per snow day of just no business. So ways we would like to mitigate that. Fortunately, we've been very successful increasing our participation. Breakfast is up 40% year over year from July to December, and lunch is up by 4%. And then we did do our summer meals program, our SFSP, and our rural non-con feedings last year, which was an absolute win. I mean, it's fantastic for the district, and it's even better for the community to make sure that we get that availability out there for our food. And that's our update. Any questions?
Board, any questions?
Okay, so I have one related to your staffing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard concerns, and you all may have worked through this, around some areas of the county not being able to get as much staffing as they would like to have.
Mm-hmm.
Have we been able to resolve some of that?
It's a great question. So when we look at our staffing, we use a national metric, and it's called meals per labor hour. And it's just, school districts use this, food service management companies use this, and it's just a baseline to determine where we are in our staffing and what is appropriate. We all know that no 2 schools are the same. And I think of like an elementary school where they have one line versus some elementary schools who have a mirrored line that just involves more people during service time. And by our metrics, everybody is staffed where they should be. Worst case scenario, there's call outs, in which case that's when we would run out there and we'd start plugging in management where it's necessary.
So when you're saying some schools don't have the same offering as others, how is that equitable across the district?
So what I mean is, as an example, if you have folks that have one line, you really need a cashier and a server to get everything moving, as compared to somewhere else. And I'm throwing a school out there, but let's think of Eastmont Elementary, where it's a mirrored line, which would necessarily need 3 folks because you do need one person on each side, as well as the cashier. Does that make sense? So as long as production's taken care of, our managers would go out and help get that production done to get through that service is what would be necessary to make sure the kids get fed.
So the offerings at all of our schools is equitable.
Yeah. Oh, the menu doesn't change, and I'm very adamant about that.
Okay.
They need permission, and I have not heard from anybody yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Board members, other questions? Dr. Roundtree?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm really happy to see that our breakfast at no cost to students is working well, and that students are participating so greatly in it. It points out the fact that it is a needed program. Hopefully we can extend that to lunch here in the near term. Thank you.
Dr. Guthrie?
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions. The first is that on the recruitment and retention slide where it says 87-90 /90 employees, what was that in reference to?
87, our goal is 90 to get to that point, and that's including subs, floating managers, everything like that.
Okay. And so what is our retention percentage? Because I know that's one of the things when you came in, it was one of the selling points from Sodexo is that there was very little turnover in your staff. What is that like, that number looking like right now?
That's a fantastic question, and I don't have that exact data point, and I can get that, and I can send that over.
Okay, great. Because I saw 87, 90, I was like, I don't know what that means exactly. So that would be great to be able to track that.
100%.
The second, go really quickly here, the Crunch heard around the world, Commonwealth, amazing local apples. Do you partner or find other opportunities to partner? Because we've got great farmers in Montgomery County and in this area. Is this like a one-off thing, or do you prioritize or bring in and create relationships with farmers in the county?
That's a fantastic question. And for this specific event, we work through our vendor to find that local farmer, but that's definitely something we can pursue. And my district manager's in the back here, and I'll have a conversation with him on our way about that.
Amazing, because we've got great farmers here, I'm sure, And then the last question was it's great to see the 40% increase in the breakfast. One of the concerns from a fellow board member was about wastage. Of students, if you give them free food at the breakfast, they're going to just throw it away and it's going to go to waste. What kind of wastage are you seeing at breakfast? Is that a concern? Are you seeing little wastage, food waste? What's that looking like?
Yeah, because that's going to be the share table. You bet, please.
If you don't mind, I'll comment on
Yeah.
that, Dr. Guthrie. So we just kind of pioneered another renewed energy around our share tables. And it's a great way to combat something like food waste. We met with folks in our district. We met with principals. We redecorated share tables. The purpose behind this was we just wanted to give back more. And if there was food left on share tables, we wanted to gather that food, safely hold that food, get it into the hands of individuals within our community, within our district, to help families out. So share tables is just it's a necessity, and it absolutely helps with food waste because it becomes almost rewarding and fun for the kids. Don't throw that apple away or don't throw that milk away. Get that up to the share table because it's going to help out another child or it's going to help out another family. So I think it's helped tremendously to keep our waste in line.
That's really great to hear. Wonderful. And the last question, really quickly, is the breakfast options for students. It's not just Pop-Tarts. I mean, is it including apples and whole foods, whole grains as well? I just want to make sure also the kind of food that we're feeding in that really important meal at the beginning of the day.
100%. And we follow all the regulations when it comes to our food service, which includes for breakfast, either half cup of fruit or a juice, because a juice can credit half the week towards a fruit. And typically in the morning, most students would choose a liquid versus a solid, being a juice. But we do have a wide variety, and all of our products are 51% or greater whole grain.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Ms. Bond? Ms. Parton?
So thank you. Incredible. Thank you for coming up with some great ideas to get our kids involved and to get them to learn to eat different things and try different things and make healthier choices. So kudos to you guys. You've done a lot of work with stuff. I look forward to more and more of our kids going through the lunch line, hopefully, with all that good food. And I just want to say thank you from me and the board, because you guys are phenomenal in taking care of us before our meetings, when we have to have a meal, when we have to get here super early sometimes. So it's always delicious, and thank you guys so much for all you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's what I was going to share as well. Everything we get is just at the utmost delicious, and if I can get a take-home box for lunch the next day, I do it because it is wonderful. And I am the board member that tends to be concerned about waste. Not so much at breakfast, though. That's not where my concern is at. My concern is at lunch. And I do think we see more waste there than we do breakfast. And I think a lot of times we have times that have to deal with our schedules for school that sometimes are really close. So for little ones, if they're eating breakfast at 9 o'clock and then having a lunch at 11, sometimes that lunch, they're eating great for breakfast, but then lunch, maybe they might not be quite hungry. But then at 1 o'clock, they of course are. But anyway, that's needless here nor there. But one of my concerns was the coverage for the share table. Because to my understanding, if the item that might be in a tray is not covered, it can't be put on the share table. Am I correct in thinking that, or am I wrong?
No, you are correct. So if you're thinking about something like baked beans or something would not go onto
Just anything
it.
that might be in a container
Absolutely.
that has to be tossed because there's not a saran wrap over it or a lid, and I understand that adds a level of cost and time. So I'm not, again, looking to cause any work, but apples and bananas and things like that are an easy share, but food, sometimes if it's not a cover, then we can't share it and we can't save it. So there's where my concern is. When you've got bigger food than a grab-and-go breakfast,
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that? Am I off balance there, or?
No, I think, what you're referring to is like entrees that the children are not finishing.
Exactly.
And half of a hamburger.
No, I'm not, I don't want to say eating something, but
Okay.
say if someone does get something on their plate and they decide, okay, I don't want this, but it's not in say a hamburger that's not been partially eaten or something like that. I mean, would be anything I would consider. But something that, say they may not want that. And instead of being able to put it on a share table because it's not in a closed container, that gets tossed.
Correct. And it would be, yes, absolutely. The fortunate thing is, the children can change their mind when they're coming through the line. I know, it's wonderful that we take counts, but we are offer versus served. And what that means is if they've changed their mind or it doesn't look as appealing as they thought it was going to be, it's okay. Because our managers are trained and we cook additional, not a lot, to keep our waste in line. But we do cook additional because we will have kids that will change their mind.
Sure.
But those, yes, the share tables, we have ice packs. We have different forms of them, of ice packs and hotel pans that are filled with water and frozen in freezers overnight. Those come out into the share table. And it's mostly, yes, it would be apple slices, whole fruits, milk, is what you're seeing on those share tables.
Right. So, thank you.
Mr. Roberts?
No questions. Thank you very much for your time.
thank you both also. I didn't have any additional questions, but just thank you for being, oh, Ms. Franklin, I'm sorry.
Okay, so this presentation is great, but one of the things that I think board members and the community are not aware of is all the regulations and guidelines around our meals. And, you know, that's the presentation I would like to see, to help educate board members and the public about everything that happens with our nutrition program. So a slice of pizza that they get at school is not the same that you're going to get from Pizza Inn, okay? And how things are weighed into that. You know, I've eaten the lunches, right? And it may be a taco or something that's wonderful, but because all the fat and the sodium has gone into that taco, I wouldn't eat the corn either, right? So it's not necessarily that kids don't want the stuff, it's because federal regulations say we can only do so much to entice them to. Because if we could cook it like they did when we were in school, everybody would eat everything because it was so good. So I would really like to have a presentation with that, and quite frankly, even samples for the board members to understand that little pig in the blanket or little corn dog is not the same as the stuff that you buy at the store, so that folks understand all the work that you all have to do, all the regulations as far as the health department and keeping records. It's just unbelievable, the work that these folks do. So that's what I would like to see at some point.
We would be happy to do that. We would need some time if that would be permissible, but there's a tremendous amount of regulations and ever-changing, as we all know, as we speak right now, right? But to your point, thank you for bringing that up, because I really think people don't realize how much has to go in to produce a 6-week cycle menu. That's a summer project, and to be able to highlight some of those regulations, I think a lot of people would be like, wow, I had no idea what goes into it.
Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
So we have several in-depth presentations coming up. Before we do that, despite writing it down, I missed something that we needed to approve coming out of closed, and according to Robert's rules, we can make a motion after returning to open session. It does not have to be the very next item, as long as the vote to return to open has happened and certified closed vote has happened. So I'm just going to kind of go back and take care of that before we have more in-depth discussions. So apologies to my board and the community for my error. Okay. So I need a motion to appoint Nicholas Fisher as the hearing officer for Montgomery County Public Schools.
I move that we appoint Nicholas Fisher as a hearing officer for Montgomery County Public Schools.
Second.
Dr. Guitry and Mr. Roberts, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Thank you so much for that little blip in the agenda. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is regarding school performance and support framework results. Dr. Amanda Widener, our interim assistant superintendent, and Michael Trussell, our assessment coordinator, will present results from the school performance and support framework that was released in December. This is just informational and there's no action expected.
Madam Chair, school board members, and our student representative, Michael Trussell, who is our school division assessment coordinator, and I will provide an overview of the school performance and support framework results that were released by the VDOE last month in December. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of the SBSF because it is new, just so you have an understanding of it. This is a new framework, so it is different than what you've seen in past years when you've received presentations like this. And what it does, it establishes state and federal accountability designations for each of our schools. This is the first year of the implementation of the framework. So it is its inaugural release. The framework is designed to provide a single aligned view of school performance by integrating both state and federal accountability requirements. And I'll explain the difference between state and federal accountability requirements to you later into the presentation. But I do want to point out that all of the data that is presented tonight, and you'll see that there are reports for each school, that is data that is all now publicly available. So if you go to the VDOE school quality profiles, you can look at different versions of these detailed reports about our schools. And I would encourage not just our staff, but also our parents and communities to use this data. I hope tonight's presentation will give you a better understanding on what that data means, but I would encourage you to look at that information. I want to start off talking a little bit about accreditation. So under this new updated system, accreditation and accountability are now separated into two distinct components. Previously, when you've heard the term accreditation, it has generally been in regards to a school's performance. That is different now. So under this system, accreditation is separated, and what it does is it assesses whether schools meet required compliance standards that are outlined in the standards of quality. So these might be things that address whether instructional programs are aligned to standards of learning, whether or not school divisions are meeting leadership and staffing requirements. So this is information we have to answer questions and provide evidence to the state, and then the state determines whether or not a school division is accredited based on whether or not we are fulfilling those compliance standards. And schools can be identified as being fully accredited, conditionally accredited, or accreditation can be denied. The good news is that all of the Montgomery County Public Schools are fully accredited. So again, under this system, this is not related to student academic performance, but based on these compliance standards, we have provided evidence that we are in compliance. So you'll see on these reports on each school, it says we are fully accredited. That's the accreditation piece. What we are going to spend more time explaining to you tonight is the accountability piece, which is what the school framework, the school performance and support framework outlines. So this is the system that determines both state accountability and also factors in the requirements for what we call federal accountability. So this graph kind of gives you an outline on what it focuses, but accountability, unlike accreditation, really focuses on student learning, student progress, and student outcomes. So under this new framework, if you look at this graph here on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see that it breaks it down. First of all, it looks at components for each level, and they are slightly different. So at the elementary and middle levels, they do look at growth. And growth is whether students are making expected progress in reading and math using a student's past performance on SOL tests and how they're expected to learn. And they have kind of a complicated formula for determining that growth. It's also factored with readiness, and at the elementary and middle level, that is mostly chronic absenteeism, although when we get to the middle school level, it also accounts for advanced coursework that students may have. The biggest component is mastery, and mastery is how students are performing, how they're meeting expectations on assessments in reading, math, and science. The high school framework is a little bit different because it does not have a growth piece. It does have a readiness piece, which factors in more than just chronic absenteeism. It also looks at advanced coursework, but it also uses what's called the 3E readiness component, which addresses a variety of other things. At the high school, it makes sense. They also look at graduation, and then they also look at mastery. So in assessing all these components, schools can earn points based on how students perform in these areas, and these points determine at the state level whether schools fall into the following categories: distinguished, on track, off track, or needs intensive support. And these categories are new. So in the past, you've probably not heard these referenced, but this is another new, a new aspect of the framework. And it's in terms of the terms that are used to designate where schools perform. So those are your state performance categories. So that accounts for the state accountability piece. So based on the summaries that we received in December, these are the designations for our schools. So we had 6 schools that were identified as being distinguished, and you saw them. Those schools were represented at and recognized at our last school board meeting. We had 8 schools that met the on-track performance category. We had 3 schools that were identified as off-track, and we had 2 schools that were identified as needing intensive support. Now, I have not gotten to the federal accountability piece. In addition to state accountability, the federal accountability piece requires all public schools to look at not just how all students are performing, but we have to look at specific student groups and look at their performance levels. And if they are not meeting or not performing or there are achievement gaps, then they cannot be identified as needing additional support. And so that's what we need by federal designation. So, and again, we'll pull up the data so you can see this more clearly. But with some of our schools that were identified as off-track or needing intensive support, they may have had enough points to fall into an on-track category at the state level, but because they had a specific group that was identified as not meeting the required threshold at the federal level, they were dropped a level. So at the federal level, these are the accountability categories that they would identify a school in. Again, if a school has a certain specific group of students that are not performing at the level at which they've identified, they can be identified as needing. The first category is comprehensive student support, what we sometimes refer to as CSI. This is the most intense. The good news is we have no schools in Montgomery County that fell into this federal category. The other categories identified on an annual basis, this is targeted support and improvement. Sometimes we call this TSI. We had 4 schools that were identified here, and it means that 1 or more groups were not meeting that threshold of overall performance, and that means that they need some extra focus and some extra support from both the division but also from the state level. And then the third category is additional targeted support and improvement. These are schools that are identified every 3 years. So once a school gets this designation, they do hold that for 3 years. But again, it's identifying 1 or more specific student groups that have not met that threshold and that have continued to have that threshold not being met. So those are the 5 MCPS schools that did receive a federal identification. And if you'll notice, you'll see a common trend here. For each of the 5 schools that were identified, the student group identified in which we were not making the performance level was for our students with disabilities. And that's at Eastern Montgomery Elementary School, Falling Branch Elementary School, Price's Fork Elementary School, Shawsville Middle School, and then Christiansburg Middle School had previously been identified, and they continue to have that additional targeted support and improvement. So those are the federal designations. That's your federal accountability piece. And that is required by ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, that requires us to look at those specific student groups. So again, this framework looks at both accreditation and accountability to kind of give us a new version of talking about these terms and looking at where our students are and what supports they need. But again, I just want to make sure that the framework really is focusing on that accountability piece, and the accreditation is looking at how compliant school divisions are in terms of following the standards of quality. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the framework that is used to assess and determine where school divisions or schools fall in terms of the framework, because as I mentioned earlier, it is different by level. So when we look at our elementary schools, that mastery piece counts more than it does at the middle and high schools. So 65% of the index is determined by mastery. And again, this is going to be student performance in math, reading, and science. Then there's the growth piece. When again, growth is looking at whether students are making expected progress based on past performance on SOL tests. And then at the elementary level, the readiness piece is looking at chronic absenteeism. And chronic absenteeism is the percentage of students who miss 10% or more of the school year, regardless of the reason. When we move on to middle school, the framework changes just slightly. Mastery counts for 60%, growth counts for 20%, and readiness counts more because with readiness here, they're adding in not just chronic absenteeism, but they're also looking at the number of students who have advanced coursework. That's an opportunity for schools to earn some extra points there. And then at the high school level, this is where the index is the most different. Mastery counts for 50%. There is no growth piece. We do look at graduation rates, but then readiness accounts for a number of things. Readiness counts for not just chronic absenteeism, but readiness also looks at enrollment in credit-based college-ready courses. It also accounts for students who earn state-approved industry credentials in some of their CTE courses, and then the enlistment piece also gives points for students who score a certain score on the ASVAB test. So again, readiness in high school is looking at a more global, complete picture of the student. So based on how students perform, and using, again, a fairly complex formula, this is determined this determines the amount of points that schools earn and designate their category. Mr. Trussell is going to break this down and show the application of what this framework looks like in our schools. Again, the presentation tonight does include a report for each school. We won't go through all of those, but we'll look at some at each level so you can kind of see the reality of how this system is applied.
Thank you. We're going to start off with the elementary model. We talk about displaying the indicators associated with mastery, growth, and readiness. Mastery contains standards of learning assessments for reading, mathematics, and science, and English language proficiency assessment. Growth is based on previous standards of learning assessments in reading and mathematics and projected performance using the VIVAS system. Readiness includes chronic absenteeism and factors in students that are absent for 10% of the school year. So let's take a look at some examples to understand how the framework score and the federal identification determine the school performance category. We'll start off with looking at Auburn Elementary. You'll notice Auburn Elementary has a framework score of 87.6 and no federal identification of student groups. Just to clarify, the numbers presented display the percentage of points received for the different indicators with the exception of chronic absenteeism, which is reversed. These numbers are not pass rates. Student groups with the dash symbol contain less than 15 students and are not considered in these calculations. You may notice that the previous slide displayed different percentages for mastery and growth indicators. The English language learner progress is considered too small, and this 10% is shifted from mastery to growth in this situation. Overall, Auburn Elementary received 52.7 of 55 points in mastery, 25.4 of the 35 points in growth, and 9.4 of the 10 points in readiness. The final framework score of 87.6 identifies the school as on track. Next, we'll take a look at Eastern Montgomery Elementary. Thank you. Eastern Montgomery Elementary has a framework score of 73.6 and a federal identification of TSI in the student group of students with disabilities. Overall, Eastern Montgomery Elementary received 49.4 of 65 points of mastery, 15.2 of the 25 points in growth, 8.9 of the 10 points in readiness. The framework score of 73.6 would place the school in the off-track performance category. However, based on the thresholds used by the VDOE to identify schools for TSI, students with disabilities performed below this threshold and are highlighted in red. Because of this identification, the school performance category is lowered to needs intensive support. Moving on to middle school. Regular attendance includes and continues to be important, in addition to gaining experience in taking and succeeding in advanced coursework. 5% of mastery and growth are shifted to the readiness indicator in middle schools. At the middle school level, we'll take a look at Christiansburg Middle. Christiansburg Middle School has a framework score of 80.7 and a federal identification of ATSI in the student group of students with disabilities. The federal identification is a continuation of a previous identification. However, if you look at the students with disabilities performance, they fell below the VDOE threshold and are highlighted in red. Overall, Christiansburg Middle received 51.3 of 60 points in mastery, 11.2 of 20 points in growth, 18.1 of the 20 points in readiness. The framework score of 80.7 would place the school in the on-track performance category. However, because of the ATSI identification, the final performance category is off track. The last model we'll take a look at is high school, which increases the focus of readiness and preparing students for life after high school. High school does not include growth and includes graduation rate in the 3E readiness framework. At high school, we're going to take a look at Blacksburg High. Blacksburg High School has a framework score of 97.4 and no federal identification. You may notice the percentage of points exceeding 100%. This is not a typo. It represents students receiving points of high performance on the standards of learning assessment or participation in multiple areas of the 3E framework indicator. Overall, Blacksburg High received 47.3 of 50 points in mastery, 13.9 of the 15 points in growth, 36 of 35 points in readiness, and the final framework score of 97.4, which identifies them as distinguished. With that, I will pass it over to Dr. Widener for next steps.
So as I indicated, we officially received these reports in December. And support is a key word within the framework. So one of the things that the state is doing for schools that have been identified as with some type of designation is they are providing additional supports for us. So I want to talk a little bit about what that's looked like. So just recently, last week, we attended some sessions where we received more information on what kind of support divisions will be receiving to help our schools that are, particularly our schools that are designated with federal identifications and what will be done to support them. We have done a comprehensive needs assessment in all of our schools. That's a process we start every summer. We were doing that with an old template, so we had already started that. The state has now updated and given us a new needs assessment. And with the needs assessment, we're going in and we're doing a deep dive into the data on how our students are performing. That data is then used to develop a multi-school support plan, which we will bring to the board for you to approve probably at our next meeting. But again, we've already done a lot of the work here because as part of our continuous school improvement process, every summer after we do the needs assessment, we create some type of school improvement plan. So we had a continuous support plan created for each school that identified specific goals based on data, that had action steps. So what we're doing now is for our schools that are identified, we're looking at those continuous school improvement plans. We're then looking at how they can connect and translate to these multi-year support plans that the state now wants us to do. These plans will support our ability to apply for school improvement grants. So these schools that have been identified will be eligible to receive school improvement grants. So for our schools that are identified with the TSI designation, they can receive up to $45,000 in a grant that will help support research-based practices related to the student group that was identified. For our ATSI school, I believe it is a $70,000 grant. So we are working in that process. Dr. Dunleavy's been working with us in our schools to begin completing the plans that need to be done so that we can apply for those grants, and we'll be eligible to hopefully receive that funding sometime this school year and start putting those funds to work to support our schools. But as I mentioned, we even though we didn't have these reports until December, we had a lot of raw data, and all of our schools did comprehensive needs assessments with their data teams over the summer. They already worked to create comprehensive school supports that have been in place, and these support plans look at really 4 domains: academic, staffing, professional learning, and school climate supports. And so in each of our schools, whether they're identified or not, we've identified measurable goals, action steps, and have really worked hard to help our schools look for research-based practices that we know can make a difference, and aligning them to the practice, and then monitoring those plans throughout the year to see how they are working. So engaging in that constant progress monitoring. How can I go back? Let's skip a slide. Thank you. I also want to talk just a little bit more about some of the other division level support and planning that we have in place. We have really created a lot of school-based systems and structures to support student learning. And again, this isn't just for our schools that are identified, but really all of our schools. We have very well-established monthly data meetings that you'll often hear people refer to as PLCs, professional learning communities. So in all of our buildings, our grade level teams, some of our departments are constantly looking at assessment data. They're having meetings to talk about this data, to look how students are performing, to problem solve and share ideas about how we can better meet the needs of all students. One of the most well-researched techniques that we are trying to expand upon, that we use a great deal at the elementary level, but we've expanded it into middle school and even high school, is this focus on enhancing small group instruction. So we know that when we look at data and we use that data to differentiate instruction, and we do it in a way that we're incorporating small group instruction, this is a very effective way to meet the needs of all students. It's also a very effective way to implement better specially designed instruction, and that is something that is definitely going to support our students with disabilities. And finally, we have focused a lot, especially in writing our plans and providing feedback to staff and helping them think about better ways to instruct and to assess and to deliver instruction, is looking at the quality of our instructional materials, making sure that there's rigor in our materials, making sure that the assessments connect to the standards, and also provide opportunities for student engagement. We have a team that is dedicated to supporting our schools and working with them directly. So schools receive regular and ongoing support from all of our curriculum administrators. They visit our buildings, they work alongside our coaches, they go into classrooms. The same is true of all of our instructional directors. They make regular visits to schools and work with the teams there. We're fortunate in recent years we've expanded the amount of instructional coaches in our school division, and that's a really valuable resource. Our instructional coaches are in the buildings. They work firsthand with our teachers. They're in classrooms. They help them not only look at data, but they also help give them feedback on instructional practices. They will work alongside and co-teach with our teachers. They will do coaching cycles with them. So again, it's really about these folks and these teams working as a team in the schools based on the needs of the students and what they're trying to achieve. So those are just some of the things that we've already have in place as a school division and are looking to expand upon and continue to use so we can improve the outcomes for all students. And then lastly, the results of this school performance framework came out later than we anticipated. So we have been engaging in quarterly division meetings, which we will continue to do. And in these quarterly meetings with our schools, we have a system where we look at student achievement and growth. We connect it back to our continuous school plans, and so we have a process to constantly problem solve and talk about the effectiveness of the instructional interventions and strategies so that we can make adjustments and add supports as they are needed. So that's kind of a very quick overview of that framework and the process and what we're doing to meet the needs of our students. So what questions can Mr. Trussell and I answer for you?
Board members, would anyone like to start?
So I have a question related to the student groups that have 15 or less students. How are we monitoring to make sure those students don't fall through the cracks when we're doing all this, since it's not calculated into the school as a whole?
So each school in their data monitoring, they track data on all students. So even though we're not required, the federal designation doesn't evaluate and calculate those students into their outcomes, we still require, our teams are still looking at all student groups and all data.
Okay. I'm still not sure why, if anybody is evaluating our schools, just because a population may be small, that they're not being figured into the school as a whole. That still has bothered me, not just with this assessment, but with other assessments.
Yeah, our approach is that all students matter, and we should be looking at the performance of all students, regardless of whether or not they fall into a group that's large enough to be calculated into their accountability. I will say that they have recently changed the formula, because it used to be they would only evaluate a student group if there was 30 or more students. Fortunately, they have reduced that to 15, but maybe they need to reduce it more.
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts?
One thing that I find remarkable is the level of chronic absenteeism. That's not a question I'm directing at you. But I just, reviewing this before tonight, the absenteeism really stood out and is very clearly a problem. But I do have to thank you for putting the report together. This was a lot of work, very clear, and the way you presented it was done very well. So thank you very much for that.
And chronic absenteeism is an area that we are focusing a lot of attention on. At our last principals meeting, we shared data with all of our schools that shows where they are now in terms of their chronic absenteeism. Because, for example, if they have students at this point who have missed, let's say, 12% of the year, if in the second semester, we could reduce that to 7, they would no longer be considered chronically absent by the end of the year. One of the things to keep in mind with chronic absenteeism is it accounts for all absences. So even if a student, we used to have what we called excused absences, with medical notes, it looks at all absences.
Regardless, some of these are pretty shocking. That's, again, not directed at you, though.
The data speaks for what it is.
It does.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yeah, thank you all so much for putting this together in a thoughtful, digestible way. To Mr. Roberts' point of chronic absenteeism, I know that's a focus of ours. The new system, getting kids into Montgomery Central, will help out, keeping the kids in school rather than putting them in out-of-school situations for discipline purposes. Also, I know in our budget right now, we have a Spanish-speaking service worker in there. I think that will help out a huge amount, getting service to the Spanish-speaking population in our communities, which are largely in the Eastmont area and Price's Fork area. I do have a question for that, serving those populations. We just have one Spanish-speaking service worker in our budget. In order to address that and get those, when those kids are not in school, getting those service workers to the parents, talking to them, getting the kids back in school, is one enough with the geographic separation of those two areas of highly Spanish-speaking populations?
One would be an improvement on what we have now. We do rely on translators, translation services. So having someone dedicated just that role would greatly improve what we have, but 2 would be better.
Okay. And then another question about those schools that have some items with special education groups. 2 of those are elementary schools that are of quite large size. Are those schools being served administratively and special education wise on an administrator to student ratio, special ed to student ratio that is equitable compared to other schools around the district? And do we need to consider increasing the APs in those schools?
That could be something we can consider. The question is, do they need more administrative support? Do they need more instructional support in the form of additional instructional coaches? our special education staff, our central office staff, our supervisors do focus a lot of their attention to our buildings with their greatest needs. So I think if we were going to expand the staff, I think we would want to be thoughtful and intentional about what kind of staffing needs do they need? What would best support their ability to, let's say, improve the specially designed instruction, to increase small group instruction, to expand their co-teaching. So I think it would be really looking at and understanding what is going to result in the best outcomes for those students, and what kind of staffing or supports would that need, would that be?
Thank you.
Dr. Kitchie?
Thank you as well to the two of you for the presentation. I want to start by again, a shout out to so many of our schools. And we've got some really high achieving schools, and I know we celebrated those achievements, but just looking at those numbers, it's really impressive. And I've seen some of the reporting from other divisions, and we are doing well. Obviously, we need to do better. If I understood correctly, the CSSP, the Comprehensive School Support Plan, is what we're going to get a presentation on in the future, or the Comprehensive Needs Assessment. What's coming down the pike?
So the VDOE, and we just received notification of this last week, as part of the process to obtain funding for the school improvement grants that I mentioned, they require us to have, at the very least, that multi-year plan. We've already done a continuous school improvement plan, but that has to be approved by the board. So that just means we need to put it in front of you for you to approve so that we can apply for those grants.
Okay, great. Thank you. So when I'm looking at the current Division level support, and when you talked about some of the planning that's has taken place, it's like we've been humming along, we've been doing these things, we're going to continue to do those things, and I see division-wide comprehensive planning here in this the school-based systems and structures slide. But I just see one item that's specifically designated instruction for students with identified needs. So you get the data, we see the report, we've got red flags for students with disabilities. What's the division's specific response in that area for these schools? Can you speak a little to that?
Sure. So in developing the multi-year plan that the state has just given us, that template and the needs assessment, we're going to look at the needs assessment that we've already done, see how much of it has already addressed students with disabilities, look at the goals that we've identified for those students, look at the research-based practices that we are already in place, and then as a team, because this is a team effort at the schools, talk about what else do we need to build upon or expand upon? What else should we put in this plan, knowing now that there is an opportunity coming where we will have additional funding to support more interventions and supports?
Okay, great. Because what I would like to see, and I'm not asking for a presentation on this per se, but I would like to know how the administration is specifically going to address students with disabilities. That helps us to see how we're responding to that data, and where there's an intersection between that office at the central office, the student with disabilities office, and building level administration, so we can see how there's going to be additional targeted support for students with disabilities. So I don't know if it needs to be just some data, or not data, but something that you just share with the board. I don't want to ask for another presentation, but I think that would be very helpful, because this is very general, a general plan for a whole division, but it doesn't help me to see how we are going to specifically address students with disabilities.
We could put together a summary of the different the different interventions that we've identified that we're working on in schools, how our central office teams are partnering with our schools to not just implement those interventions, but to provide support, provide feedback, and then how are we measuring the progress that we're hopefully seeing as a result of those.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. And again, well done, so many of our schools, our students, our parents, families, administrators. It's really impressive, some of these results.
Thank you both for all the information, a lot of information. I know that was very time-consuming, and I am so proud of all of our schools, all of them. We've got some great ones, and then we've got some ones that we need to help as well. So, but nonetheless, they're all fantastic. A lot of my fellow board members had already asked a couple of the things that I was looking at as well, so I'm not going to be redundant. But a couple of things that were mentioned, I believe Dr. Roundtree had mentioned the Spanish-speaking translator. If I can recall in the past, I want to say I think we had gone to what we're doing now because we have some problems finding someone that can do that for us. I don't know. Is that, you think that would still be a problem as far as hiring at this point, or do we think that may have gotten better? I know we had talked about possibly trying to get more than one if needed. I didn't know if the difficulty in finding what we need was, if that obstacle was still there for that.
There may be challenges in finding someone who has those qualifications, but I'm inclined to think there are probably qualified candidates out there.
That's good to know. And maybe some volunteers, maybe? I think we've had a couple volunteers in the past, maybe. Hopefully, maybe we can have some volunteers step up. That would be great. And on the special education, we do need to do some work and some improvements there. We have been talking about this for a long time now, and I don't know if we have given any thought, and I may be jumping the gun a little bit here. Have we thought about, I know we've been continuing to do the same thing. At what point are we going to look at maybe looking at something different, or maybe looking at a new aspect or a different way to approach things? Have we even gotten to that point yet? Or is that something that we might look at further down the line if we continue to try to make achievements and we're just not getting where we need to be? I didn't even know if that was in the process yet or even thought or talked about.
Well, we've implemented some new things over the last couple of years. Our learning labs, where we've been able to provide more specialized instruction.
Right.
We're continuing to try to build on our co-teaching model. We've put a lot of emphasis on trying to build our capacity in designing and delivering specially designed instruction. So are you speaking more of looking at on a larger scale, like our inclusion model?
The program, that model, I didn't know, because I know that we have been doing this for a while and we're still having issues and we keep trying to resolve the issues. So I didn't know if there would be any point to where that we would at some point possibly consider looking at other options or what we could do to help be more proactive to where we could help these students. I didn't know if that was even talked about yet.
Our special education department usually will do a presentation in March.
Okay.
They'll bring forward their annual plan and address our different programs and services that we have in place. So I think at that point, that might be an opportunity to highlight things that are going well and working, and maybe areas that we want to highlight as needing some fine tuning or some changes.
Okay, sounds perfect. Thank you both again so much.
Ms. Bond?
I'm good. I think everybody's covered everything that I might want to ask, but wonderful. Thanks for all the information.
Avi, did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Anyone else have a second? I'm kind of in agreement with Ms. Bond that I feel we have addressed most of the concerns that I also noticed, and because we'll be getting your plan, relatively imminently, that's kind of the second piece of this, kind of highlighting the problems and then, the plan that we can approve so that you can get that extra funding for things. We've known that students with disabilities has been a point to address at MCPS for a while, and we also know that chronic absenteeism has been a problem for a while, and it's not just our problem. Like, that's a national problem with schools. It's been kind of exacerbated by COVID lockdown, and but we have to deal with it here. So thank you again for all the time and thought that went into putting this together, and we look forward to more information. Okay. Our next agenda item is regarding monitoring for disparities and outcomes. Stacy Wright, Director of Equity and Diversity, Suzanne Alexander, Administrator of Equity Compliance, and Rob Ratcliffe, Director of Technology, will present information on first semester monitoring for disparities and outcomes in Montgomery County Public Schools. And this is just informational with no action.
Good evening, Chair Purcell and school board members, Dr. Widener. We are here before you today because this, as you know, you passed a policy on monitoring disparities and outcomes for our students when it comes to behavior in November. And part of that policy includes us coming before you in January and June to kind of discuss where we are with those disparities and what we are seeing within our schools. And as you said, Suzanne Alexander is someone who has helped us work on this as well. She is not able to be with us tonight, but we have several other departments that work with us. Our compliance officer, Leah Bressler, and then also Mr. Garrettson, in our safety department. And so here we go. So in monitoring for our disparities, these are the things that we use to look up or to find the information that we needed to decide where the disparities were coming from so far. We use the student behavior and administrative response, our MCPS progressive discipline matrix, student groups as determined by the state, risk ratio analysis, and also Power School. And we chose those things because those are the things that the state looks at when we're able to to look at how our data and our student performance, especially when it comes to behavior. For the first semester, our top 3 codes were BSO 16, which is student in an unauthorized area of the campus, that led to out-of-school suspensions. In-school suspensions, excuse me. Our second one was BAP1, interfering with learning, and BSO2, refusal to comply with staff request. And so one of the things we want you to kind of know about these behaviors when it comes to our students, before in the state, we were not allowed, a few years ago, we were not allowed, so if a student was not in the right place in the class, in the building, we were not allowed to give ISS or OSS for this. Now we are allowed to do that. From the state, they said that we can do those things. So we have seen a little bit of an uptick of students not wanting to go to class. And I know all of us have been teenagers once, and teenagers and even students at a time, even in elementary school, we just didn't want to be here. So we decided to go other places. Now I know that's probably not your problem here because all of y'all went to class and did everything that you were supposed to do. It just might have been me in the 80s who might not have been where I was supposed to be. But we know that students do that, and they often are in unauthorized places in the building. Our goal here is to figure out why. Why are they not in the classrooms? Why are they not where they're supposed to be? And so our second one was interfering with learning in class. That could be anything from tapping a pencil too much, speaking out too loud, not listening to the teacher. That could be any number of things that our students are doing. And so we are trying to work with our teachers and our administrators to recognize those behaviors and then to give better behaviors or optional behaviors that students can do instead of those things. And then our third one was a refusal to comply with staff requests. That could be something like not taking off a hoodie when a teacher asks you to. And so what we are working with our staff members in doing, like, sometimes a hoodie is a place of comfort. Like, I don't know what you do when you're home when you want to be comfortable, but I like to wrap up in a blanket and lay on my couch and put on my fuzzy socks. And sometimes for students in schools who are experiencing different things, a hoodie is just one of those things that provides some comfort. We know that sometimes that can create a safety issue. However, how we react to those things could limit the amount of in-school suspensions that we see coming from those. Our next ones are the behaviors that led to out-of-school suspension. And you see that that refusal to comply with staff requests ended up our number one. It was our number 3 for in-school suspension, but our number 1 for out-of-school suspension. And I think sometimes when it comes to our students, their rules are a little bit different at home than they may be at school. They have in middle and high school, they have 7 to 8 teachers that they have to deal with different rules in every classroom. And so it can get a little bit confusing and you can get a little bit tired of it by the end of the day. We just have to work with our students to understand what our expectations are at Montgomery County Public Schools. Defiance to staff, question or request. So I say to Robert, take off your hoodie. And Robert's like, man, you always messing with me. Like, why are you always in my face? Why are you whatever? If I, as the teacher or the administrator, take that absolutely personal, then we can't come to a consensus. And so again, what we have been working with our staff and our administrators on of, thinking of different responses when our students are doing that. And we like to think that everybody comes to school and they know exactly what we want them to do, but that could change from day to day. And so we just want to make sure that we are reiterating and making sure that our students understand our expectations. You can do whatever you do when you're at home, but here, this is our home, MCPS, and our expectations might be a little bit different, but we're going to help you get there. We're not just going to leave you out there on a lurch. And then the last one, or our third most consistent one, was profane, vulgar language. And again, like I said, I was in the 80s. Maybe we used to use profane language just a little bit much more than maybe kids do, or about the same amount. But the difference is that sometimes kids are often performing for their peers. That might not be the way that they talk at home. It just may be the thing like, I'm going to be cool, so I'm going to say all these bad words or whatever, and my friends are going to laugh, but then I'm going to end up in trouble. And so we have to continue to teach our students exactly what we expect for them here. And then we also have to teach our administrators and our teachers not to necessarily take it personally, but to figure out options and questions that you can ask to make sure students comply with what you want them to do. Because we don't accept that type of language here in Montgomery County Public Schools. And unfortunately, as much as we think that we can tell them once at the beginning of the school year, we have to do it like after Halloween, we have to do it after winter break, we have to do it after a 3-day holiday, we might have to do it, if we get this snow that they're talking about next week, we're probably going to have to reinforce our expectations again for our students. And I think that if we continue to do that, this is going to improve some of that in our classrooms. So the next part that we're going to talk about, because part of the policy talks about risk ratio and risk index, and this is how we come up with the charts that you'll see in a very few moments. So Mr. Radcliffe, the Director of Technology, is going to come and explain those slides to you.
Hello, Board. So in the policy, it does state risk ratio is what we are to show you all. But to get the risk ratio, you have to understand a risk index. So the risk index talks about, for example, if 229 students that are white, out of a total of 533 receive in-school suspension, then their risk index will be 41.4%, meaning that 41.4% of that population received in-school suspension. It helps us identify and compare disciplinary disparities across a specific student group. So just wanted to share that information with y'all first. So then the next thing is the risk ratio. So you take that risk index and you look at two groups there. For example, in the example here, it has a Hispanic population was 32.3%, and the risk for white students was 12.9%. So you take those two, you divide them out, which tells you that Hispanics are 2.5 times more likely to receive that in-school suspension than white students. We do use a risk ratio for multiple reasons to direct comparison between subgroups to identify potential disparities. Risk ratios can also be tracked over time for the purpose of transparency and continuing improvement. So that's why we use that for that. There are some limits to that, especially if that group size is small, which was kind of mentioned earlier on with Dr. Widener and Mike Trussell there when it came to that 15 or below. That's one reason to take it out, because there can be some discrepancies there. So the first thing we're going to look at is in-school suspension. This is the risk index. Going back, the risk index gets us to the risk ratio. So at the very top, Black or African American students was 5.19% of that population received in-school suspension. That equals to 22 students out of that population group. And the Black or African American and white, which we would say multi-race, I pull these straight from the state. Along with that, what I did is if a student had Hispanic down on PowerSchool, they came out of that group that they were in. So a student could be white and Hispanic. They could be Black and Hispanic. The way the state and the federal government handles any data when it is related to that is they strip that first race out, whether it be white, Black, and they go strictly to the ethnicity of Hispanic. So that's what I did here as well to make sure the data was accurate. This also is all data for any student who has been in our school for at least one day. They were included in this data. So I'm not going to go through each one there, but you can kind of see the percentage for the in-school suspensions. So that leads us to the in-school suspensions risk ratio. And so the way you'll read this, and the reason the way this is laid out is if you notice here, Black or African Americans were 5.19%, so that was our highest group. And so that's why on the left, they're at the top. So the way you read this is it says Black or African American on the left, and you go right, is 1.13 times more likely to receive in-school suspension than our Black or African American and white students. Same going across, Black or African American students are 1.2 times more likely than Hispanic, 1.43 more times likely than whites, and then 10.81 more likely than Asians. Again, the Asian population for in-school suspension was much smaller. Going to the next, Black or African American and white or multi-race is 1.06 more times likely than Hispanic, 1.26 more times than white, and then 9.5 more times likely than Asian. And you can continue with the Hispanic and the white population as well. So then what we wanted to look at was our the in-school suspension for students with IEPs or 504. And we broke that down by the subgroups there, by their race or ethnicity. And then at the bottom, this is the overall students with IEP or 504. 7.11% of that population received in-school suspension, where students without an IEP or 504 was 2.61% received in-school suspension. Again, this chart reads just like the last one with the left and then reading to the right. I do want to point out at the very bottom, it shows the students with IEPs or 504 are 2.72 times more likely to receive in-school suspension than students without IEP or 504. We then move to our out-of-school suspension risk index. Again, very similar to the previous one where Black or African American students are 5.43% more, that population is to receive out-of-school suspension. And then as you move down, you'll see the numbers there. Again, the numbers on the right are the number of students out of that population. Very much like this last one, here you'll see Black or African American at the top on the left. They're 1.25 times more likely than Black or African American and white, the multi-race. 2.14 times more likely than white students to receive out of school. 2.8 times more likely to receive out of school than Hispanics. And then 11.31 over Asians. And then you can continue reading from there. I just wanted to remind you on how to read that graph there. And then looking at out-of-school suspensions for students with IEPs or 504s, broke it again by subgroups. And at the very bottom, you'll see there, students with IEP or 504, that population was 6.1% received out-of-school suspension. Students without was 1.59% received out-of-school suspension. Again, when we look at the risk ratio, It's broken down by the subgroups at the top, and then at the bottom, it will state that students with IEP or 504 are 3.84 times more likely to receive out-of-school suspension than students without an IEP or 504. One of the things here is the impact on out-of-school suspension. As the first group was kind of talking about the attendance piece, I was looking at this, and this was based on instances, which at the time we were putting this together, I felt like was good, but then I said, let me look at this a little bit more, a different lens. So just to give y'all some context that I think is a little bit better than this data here, there have been a total of 42,477 absences this school year. That means that's how many times we've had kids missing school. Now there's some kids who've missed one, there's some kids who've missed 37. Out of that 42,477, 1,241 have been due to out-of-school suspensions, which equals to 2.92% of absences have been due to out-of-school suspensions.
Then we hear, data that you all will know, long-term suspensions and expulsions, and this was as of December 2025. The total number of board hearings that we had were 18. Long-term suspensions were 3, expulsions were 2, and readmissions were 3. Students group impacted the most by long-term suspension or expulsions are students with disabilities or 504s or IEPs at 56%. Now, I know that, we keep on mentioning about students with disabilities and the 504s, and that's definitely an area that we need to certainly address. But I think the good news that we have here is that the behaviors that we saw were what we call relationship behaviors. And so the thing about relationship behaviors, we all can be taught how to treat each other better. We just have to be able to work on those things and to look at the differences of why we have why people do what they do, and then why we respond the way that we usually respond when we are the adult. Some of the improvement-focused strategies that we have done so far is that we re-implemented the discipline matrix. And what this has done for us is to help us promote consistency throughout the division. It provides safeguards for our principals to kind of have have the ability to decide, is this thing really worth Stacy being out for 3 days of school, or can we work with her on her behavior? And one of the things that we really want to know, we want to talk about when we're talking about discipline is different from punishment. Discipline is to correct the behavior. It is a teaching tool. Punishment just means we're going to give you this consequence and hope that you get it sooner or later. And so when we discipline, there are a lot of things that we do when our kids come back into school. Some of the other things that we've already done is the SEL curriculum, which we have Move This World and Ripple Effects. In 2024-25 school year, it was just kind of y'all play around with it, see how it works, look at the different interventions that it gives you. And so Move This World was for actually, at first, it was for kindergarten, elementary, and middle school students. We found that it wasn't working as well with middle school students, so this school year we changed it. But this year, this is a directive. We need to be using these things to see how these SEL curriculums can help our students move forward. Some ways that we know that people are using them, like if a student is in ISS and they have finished all of their work and they're sitting there kind of with nothing to do, but they have the rest of the day of ISS. And say it was the vulgar language or something that we had them in ISS for. Then they are able to find in these curriculums some things that talk about language and talk about how language is used and how it's used publicly and different things like that for students to be able to go through and do at their own pace. And then what we're hoping to include in this year is having people then after they do those curriculum, they just don't do it and click through it and get all the right answers or whatever, but there's someone that they can talk to, like a school counselor or somebody who is able to bring that all together for them. the code of conduct expansion. From our code of conduct, last year we expanded to the hate speech policy that we've seen that people are really implementing this school year. We don't know if people are really being more hateful or if people are just paying more attention to it. What we hope is the second, that people are just paying more attention to it, and our teachers and our adults in the building are stopping it. And then this policy here that helps us to monitor for outcomes. This will be kind of like our baseline data because we didn't have this before. We didn't have the data that we could kind of go back and really dig through and look at and see why people were doing what they were doing. At the beginning of the school year, we had expectation assemblies at all schools. So for our hate speech policy, we rolled out a PowerPoint presentation or a slides presentation that all elementary school teachers or schools had to use in an assembly to explain to their students at their level exactly what hate speech was and what it meant and how we didn't want to use it and the difference between hate speech and just being kind of mean. And then also review of school-wide expectations. Like we always know, about October, it gets kind of wonky. We've been in school for a long period of time. Kids are tired. Teachers are tired. Now the honeymoon period is over. That we aren't afraid at having our principals to have those expectation assemblies more often, not just at the beginning of the school and near the end of the year before SOL testing, but throughout the school year. We are expecting people to have those assemblies. Professional development. We have simple discipline, and a lot of these things like simple discipline, move this world, and ripple effects were things that we got kind of in the middle of the school year. So we're still trying to work it out and make sure that people are trained and know how to use it. I know Ms. Bressler has worked really hard to understand this program. She's going to have to train many of us because she's dug deeper than most of us, and she's getting feedback, especially from the assistant principals, because those are the ones who usually have to deal with discipline more than the principal. We also are doing book studies, Finding Your Blind Spots, which deals with how do we react to people's behavior? How do we react when somebody curses at you? How do we react when somebody uses a derogatory term towards you? And we've done that. We're doing it now at CHS and SMS. And then last year we did it at Price's Fork and Christiansburg Elementary School. And that comes directly from my office. And then also with our Office of Equity and Diversity, intentionality and stability. And what I say with that, kudos to you guys that when it was very tough to even keep this office, you all fought for us to be able to have this office. And then the intentionality are now at the district level, like we are included in those walkthroughs. We're doing equity walks. We're walking around looking at are our students represented well here, which is something I don't know that we did really well in the past, but we are still working to do that. So now, when we talk about our tools that we'll use going forward to try to reduce these disparities, we have to find out the root cause, because if most of our high-flying behaviors are relationship behaviors, we got to figure out what is not connecting. Like especially with our SPED students, what is not connecting? Is it part of their disability that we just don't understand how to discipline? Is it part of their disability when we're issuing out discipline that we may not have looked at the IEP totally? If it's students from different cultures, is this a cultural thing, or is it something that they're really not doing? Is it because we don't understand each other? And having those conversations with our students and staff are helping us to improve that. Stakeholder reflection. We want to do this to improve our capacity in everybody. We have the equity leads that are now we're working on a racial slurs presentation that can be taken out and used as an education tool. Different things like that for our students and our families, talking to our students and our families and making sure that they understand, yep, y'all can do all of that at home if you want to, but there's a certain expectation we have when you enter the doors of a Montgomery County public school. And that's not just for students and families, that's also for our staff. There's a certain thing that we expect from you and how you treat our students when you're here. And our staff does a pretty good job of that. Also, continue with professional development. We are going to provide the needs as we see them. As we're doing these walkthroughs in these schools and we're finding out things where there are disparities, as we continue to look at this data, like from now until June when we have to, again, come together and figure out what these disparities are, then we are definitely going to continue to make sure that we are planning professional development based on our need and based on the things that we are seeing within our schools. And then, one of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing, like the numbers and all of that stuff matters, but numbers tell a different story than qualitative data. Like when you're having focus groups and talking to students and asking them, like, why are you not coming to school? What is the absence short of the in-school and out-of-school suspensions, the things that we do? Why do you come to school and act this way? What are those things? What can we help you? How can we help you to be successful? And those are things that we're going to make sure that they can provide context for us for our decision making. And examine consistently the expectations that we have for our students. We think that when kids or people get to a certain age, that they should know these things already, and many of us should. But sometimes in the heat of the moment, we forget. And so we have to look at that human value as well to make sure that our students are doing what they need to do. And I think that's it for us. Do you have any questions based on the presentation?
Thank you so much, Ms. Wright. Anyone want to volunteer to go first?
We won't be
Ms.
here
Franklin.
all night long. This was a lot of information.
Yes.
And I appreciate it. Sometimes folks are like, presentations are so long, but sometimes presentations are long because we need to hear what we need to hear and need to understand what we understand. With that said, I'm gonna tell you, those graphs, I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Okay.
But I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm glad to hear about all the work that's being done and that it is being received in a way that is making a positive impact. One of the things that our students, when they came to the board to talk about the use of the N-word, one of the things that they talked about was having I hate to use this, but a safe space, but a place where they could come together and talk about how they were feeling about when things like this happened to them. So are we doing anything to help support students who are, let's say, the victims of this kind of behavior?
Yes, we are beginning to do that more. And that's one of the things that we have decided that the two schools that we are doing the book studies in, we asked the teachers there to tell us the student that, for lack of a better term, but the student that you absolutely notice, but not for the right reasons. And so we asked that question, and then we said, tell us about the student that doesn't really give you any problems, but you don't really notice them. And so they have given us a list of students, and starting in February, we will be doing focus groups, small groups of 10 students. Once their parents send their permission form, at least 10 students in those focus groups, just hearing what those children have to say, putting those questions out there, because we talk about student voice a lot of times, but we do it in a very big general way. It's easier to have students because we know that sometimes it's not easy to talk in front of your peers, and sometimes it's not easy to say the things that you need to say. So we will begin those focus groups in February. So that will probably be part of the information that you'll get next time, to hearing exactly what the students have to say about having to go there. And then finding those trusted adults. We've asked people to, like in our schools, they've done this dot activity at almost all of our schools, where they have the pictures of the student, and like you had to put a dot, like if you have some kind of relationship with this student and this student knows. And so they are supposed to be checking on those students that they've placed a dot by. So then if we have students that have no dots, then we need to make sure that we're looking at those students to make sure they do, like you said, for lack of a better word, that they have a safe place or a person that they can connect with within the schools. And our elementary schools started that first, and now it has gone on to our middle schools and to our high schools, in which we think this will make a great impact because students will know that, hey, I can go to Dr. Gitry because that's my person, right? So that's my person, and that's the person who I connect with, and he's talked to me like, hey, I connect with you if you ever need to talk to me, and then they will go straight to those people. And they have more than one person as well.
Follow with this. So they may have an adult, but what about students being able to talk with other students about this happened to me, this has happened to me? How do you help each other, our peers? The peers help each other to work through issues.
And I think we haven't gotten that far yet, but I hope that with our focus groups, that's where we can get some people together to be able to say, hey, Stacy has experienced this as well. Why don't you go and talk to her, see if she will talk to you about that? But we have to know what those things are because they're very broad. And so that's why we really wanted to talk to our students in smaller groups, because we've talked to them in bigger groups, but that's a little more difficult to decipher. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Roberts?
So I really do appreciate all the work that went into this. It clearly was a lot, and I like how the two of you presented it. It was done very clearly. Commenting kind of on Ms. Franklin, we had peer groups when I was in school, and they were just small groups of kids for whatever reason. I think that's a great idea. I take issue with you suggesting that we were swearing in the 80s. Of that. But thank you no, I was not. Thank you so much. This was very helpful and very informative, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Roundtree?
Pretty sure neither of us were in middle school in the 80s.
I was close.
You were close, but so I had a question. Thank you all for putting all this together. The transparency with it is very good. With the students with IEP or 504 in the various categories, is the denominator to get that percentage, is that the total of those categories, or is that the students with IEP in those categories?
Yeah, so that would be the total. So that total is, for example, if I'm looking at white students, for example, it's the total white students who had an IEP over the total white students.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I can break it, we can bring it down more if that, I know what you're trying to get at is like what percentage of students who were white with an IEP over the total students with an IEP who were white.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah,
break that down. Yeah.
I think that information would be very insightful as
yeah.
well.
I'll make a note of that.
Right,
Perfect.
thank you.
you.
Yep, sorry, that's everything. Thank you.
Dr. Gitry?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Could you go to the slide, the improvement-focused strategy?
Mm-hmm.
So you put together the data,
Mm-hmm.
and when did you finish compiling the data and looking at putting those ratios together? When did you finish that work?
We finished it before we went home for winter break.
Okay, great, because I was wondering, okay, so you get the data, you've analyzed it, you see, for instance, that it's no surprise, students with disabilities, they're, overrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering, okay, so what I'm seeing here, is that a response to the data, or is this just things that we're doing? This is kind of parallel, the mirror to the questions I had about our performance also with disability. Because when I'm looking at this list,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking, okay, so students with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
where's the improvement focus strategy specifically for them? And I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I'm looking at this and wondering, so I would love to see just a robust response to this data with focus strategies that deal with some of these populations, specifically students with disability. I know that's another office, but you're working closely with that office.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to respond.
Well, I will respond to that. I think that for us, and I do know I've spent a lot of time in another division where we did special education, just a little bit different. And so I think we pride ourselves here in Montgomery County on the fact that we did the all-inclusion model. However, at the time when that started, a lot of disabilities were a little bit different than they are now. And I'm not sure, like, we always want to make sure that our kids are in the least restrictive environment. And so we try to make sure that we do that. But I do think these are just things that we had already done. So in these strategies, and the data kind of was overwhelming, sometimes surprising, sometimes not when it came to students with disabilities, because we knew that it was an area that we needed to focus on. So I'm with you that I feel like now that the data is glaring at us and telling us what to do in our next presentation, working with Dr. Ligon, who is the director of that office, that we do come up with some of those things. I think many of them do also, just instructionally. Co-teaching is a very difficult thing to do. And then we've all used this model in schools since I have been an educator, and I've been almost 30 years, that, at one time the teacher, whoever was the core teacher, did all the teaching, and then the special education teacher kind of just walked around and didn't do anything. And I think that's sometimes a hard habit to break, but we're working really hard with SDI to be able to break those habits and then to look at those things for students with disabilities. So I will look into making sure that we have some specifics for the groups. And like I said, this was a little bit of a short turnaround when we had the policy approved. And so we were just trying to give you the best data that we had at that time. So looking at those groups, definitely I made a note of that. A more robust, I put it right here.
Great, thank you so much, because I know that there are best practices for
Yes.
for reducing instances of in-school and out-school suspensions for
Yes.
students with disabilities, and love to see that
Yes.
in the response. And just as an aside, I was not surprised to hear what you said about the SEL curriculum. I've heard some vigorous criticism for the curriculum itself and how it's being used. And so improvements that we can make in that area would, I think, be welcomed by a number of people.
Thank you.
Ms. Parton?
So thank you both so much. A lot of information, a lot of good information, and a lot of things we needed to know. And so I did have one thing, even though you all presented all the percentages and everything, which is very well needed. Are we also looking at discipline in the effect of, are we seeing the same disciplinary action taken for the same behavior? Are we looking at that? Like, are we looking at if there's any disparities for the same disciplinary, student who these three students got in trouble for the same thing, and is the discipline the same? Are we monitoring that part of it at all?
And I think that we are doing a better job of that. Like I said, with the discipline matrix coming back before, because it creates consistency there. Like that, they have a number of things that they can do. Like, it's not like it's just like, okay, if you do this, then this happens. But they have a number of things that they can do. And so in our principals meeting, some of the things that we have been able to do is that we give principals the scenario of something that really happened in our school division. And so elementary school principals will go and they'll rate and say what they're going to do. And then middle and high school principals would do the same thing. And then we come back together and talk about it. And it is, I mean, it's discipline is subjective, right? And everybody doesn't do it the same way. Like I might be able to tolerate, my thing might be if you use vulgar language to me, I might be, the first thing I would say, are you talking to me? Right? I mean, we want to make sure before we even go through that. That could easily de-escalate something that could be going further. Whereas if I approach that, we don't use this language here and blah, 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 blah. If you approach it that way, you might get a very different reaction. But when you catch somebody off guard and say, are you sure you're talking to me? And then those are things that we have to teach, because we don't expect our kids to curse at us or to say vulgar things to us, but they do. Let's be real, they do. And so I think we are working on those types of things, giving scenarios to our principals, each principal meeting, from all of the things that we see in our discipline letters. Like a lot of us in here get the discipline letters every time they go out. And so we all look at them like, yeah, what do you think about this? And we talk about them too at the division and leadership level.
Okay, perfect. And then only because this has been mentioned several times by the MCEA and teachers and things like that, because I know that the whole professional development and time has been brought up. So just out of me trying to learn more about our professional development, and I know there's time that's taken from teachers, that need to do this professional development, not only for our students' sake, but for them as well. So just curious as to what got you to do this particular book study on this book for this particular curriculum that we're looking at for the disparities. Was that something that you all heard about somewhere else that was working, that was doing this, or was this just something that you happened to come across, or?
So for this particular book study, it was something that I learned about in a training that I went to a couple of years ago, and then coming back and reading the book. One of the good things about the book that most of the times that teachers ask us, they say, well, what am I supposed to do? Like they want a strategy and they want to fix. Right. And so one of the good things about the book is that it gives you not necessarily a fix, but many options of things that you can do as the teacher in the classroom when a student does this, or this. And so it gives you all those things, and then how you connect the family. So that was one of the things that I really liked about the book, and why we chose to do it. We do it at 2 schools a year. Last year was 2 elementary schools. This was 2 secondary schools, just because there are only 2 of us. Right. And so there are 5 sessions that we do with this book study, and we do have to find time. So we've done it on professional development days. Our principals have been really gracious with us and given up like part of a faculty meeting for us to come. And so we are very cognizant of the time that our principals have. And like the future professional development, like we're going to have more offerings from our office to help with those types of things when we have choice PDs and things like that.
And that goes to my next question, was to make sure that our teachers and our other employees had the tools they needed, which kind of speaks to that by what you just said as well.
Yes, and we're trying to do that.
Ms. Bond?
I have a bad microphone here. Okay, so I am an 80s girl, okay? There might have been some swearing going on, but it was not in the classroom.
Right.
And it generally was not at teachers or administrators.
Absolutely.
It did not happen, not very often. So I am glad to hear you say that is something that won't be tolerated in Montgomery County Schools, because I understand everybody comes from different home lives, but we are supposed to be preparing students for workforce and college readiness. So we have to understand that just because you may not care for me, the way I look, how I am, what I do, doesn't give you the right to speak to me ugly.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that that's what we need to allow students to do to our staff or our teachers. And for me, as a board member, I personally hear a lot of teachers that do get frustrated with that. And so I am very glad to hear that's something that we will not tolerate. And I understand that sometimes we have to use a different path. I'm a believer in, for an example, someone saying, I need you to be still or be quiet, opposed to saying shut up. You know, I hate that word.
Right.
Because it does come across completely different. So I understand what we're saying, that sometimes using a different path, a different verbiage of how to, what are you talking to me? You know, what do you mean by that? Sometimes that could spark a whole different thing. Absolutely I am, or, you know, you don't know. But still, we're not doing our students any favors by allowing them to act that way toward friends or administration or teachers, because when they get in the workforce, and that will not be tolerated. So I am glad to hear you say that, and thank you for everything else. It was a lot of information, and as our other board members have shared, much needed. It's good to see where we are and how we need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Avi, did you have any comments or? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. So, how exactly are the teachers getting trained? Is it through the Finding Your Blind Spots book?
Some of that is definitely one of the things, and it's not just that, because we can't, like I said, it's only 2 of us, so we can only do so many schools within a year, and then there's so much time that we have. But there are other things that we present to our principals as well, and that we talk about at every principals meeting. And I think I mentioned, but in case I didn't, that like we do scenarios of if this thing's happen. If this happens, then what do we do here? And our principals take those back to their faculty meetings. But there are a lot of teachers, and it's hard sometimes to get to everybody, and especially when we want to be able to be respectful of their time. But if it's anything that has to do with them doing their job and performing their job better, then we believe that it's very important that they continue to get development on those things.
Yeah, and so like through elementary school, middle school, and high school, like I assume like the strategy for dealing with students is different, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, because, you know, the things that you can say to an elementary school student, you know, a lot of times they're still really, really, really happy about learning a lot of times. Not that middle school and high school students aren't, but they have other things going on, right? And so those strategies are definitely different. That's why even when we put out our hate speech PowerPoints, they were specific so that our kids could understand it at their level. And so there are different scenarios. And then teachers often send us questions about, like, I don't know what to do about this. Or they'll call our office and say, like, I'm not sure what to do about this. And so I pull on my friends like Dr. Garrison and Ms. Bressler to be able to be like, let's brainstorm, because this teacher has really reached out and she's trying, or he's trying to do the best that they can do, but they need some more strategies to deal with these things with their students.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I'll just echo the sentiments of my fellow board members. Thank you so much for being here tonight, for taking all the time to put everything together. I'm excited about the addition of that qualitative piece. I mean, there's something about numbers, like, okay, you can show me a trend, but when you have the stories, that kind of, it's different. Like you said, it's just different. It helps put everything in context and kind of give you an idea of what to look for in the toolbox, or to keep looking for if you haven't found it yet. I'm also really excited about your focus groups, and I know it may not be appropriate for every student group, but I would be really curious to say, like, what do the kids say about addressing some of this, and how can they kind of influence how we can all do better. But thank you so much.
And I think for us, that was what we were thinking about, because they have a totally different way, you know, of thinking. I have a 31-year-old daughter, and even the things that she and I talk about, like, I don't think I ever would mention. I'm older than her, and I still don't mention those things to my mom, but we are learning to communicate in different ways, and we have to meet our students where they are, and that doesn't mean that we don't have expectations. I think when we start with high expectations, we keep putting that into their heads. Hey, this is how we're going to act. You know why we're going to act here like you said, Ms. Bond, because you're going to have to go somewhere. You're not going to be able to curse out every boss you have. I mean, you probably can, but you hope your mom and dad have a big basement or something like that. But we just want to make sure that our students are able to move forward. And that is our goal, that our teachers and our students come to school and they feel safe and feel glad to be here.
It's really hard to change a culture, and I feel like that was kind of a trend that we saw both with chronic absenteeism and also with this kind of like our culture at MCPS might need to be a little bit different than whatever else you have going on in your life. But there are real reasons for that because you're not always in school, and we need to work together. And you can't. Some of these antisocial behaviors don't really help with that. So thank you so much.
Okay.
That's right. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Okay. Our next agenda item is our budget discussion. We'll hold a discussion on the 2026-2027 budget. Angie Bland, our Director of Finance, and Trevor Bennett, our Assistant Director of Finance, are available for questions if needed. This is a discussion. No action is expected. Next Tuesday, we do have our special budget session to discuss things in more depth. Ms. Bland has been sending us all kinds of information related to other questions that we have asked for so that we can get a better understanding of where money goes and how it's allocated and how we can address all the problems, that we learned about tonight in the best manner. So I'm thinking what we need from you all tonight is just to know, is that enough? Is there more that we need to be prepared? Are there other things that we need to ask for? Ms. Bond?
Do we have a follow-up date in case we get the 20-some inches of snow that we've got coming Saturday and Sunday? Because I don't think we're going to be having a meeting on Tuesday night if we get all that weather. So,
Ms. Osborne, we may need to ask your assistance in checking folks' availability. I know that there is a lot of overlap even with the 27th before then. That's when the Capitol Conference is. Other people are out of town, so.
I'll have a heart attack.
They did send an email today about the Capitol Conference. I think it's going to be all virtual. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because of the snow? Wow, that changes everything about being able to attend.
the Capitol Conference, they're looking at making it all virtual now because of the weather predicted.
Planned to go, and I planned not to now. Right.
So,
You would have to come to a board meeting.
Dr. Getry?
So I have a question. So what's the difference between the conversation today about the budget and the one that, it was firmly scheduled for the next Tuesday, right? Okay, so what's the difference in the conversation between this one and Tuesday that we're having?
Sure. So the administration could answer. What we had gotten as direction was that y'all wanted more detail, more line items called out. So we asked the administration to do that. So the budget that Ms. Bland sent us in email provides that structure. Mm-hmm. And the question is that the structure that we want for discussions next week? Or do we need more material than what is in there?
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking when we got some of the information that we would be having a conversation about the budget to move it forward, but maybe I'm off base here. Maybe
No, not yet, Ed. Not quite yet.
not quite yet. Okay.
So I would like to see if I know that the Board of Supervisors, as well as me as a school board member, likes to see as much information as possible. And I appreciate Ms. Bland and everyone going back and putting things out more in a line item. It just makes it easier to read, easier to understand, and maybe breaks things down a little bit better for both of the boards to discuss. But if we could possibly, because I know this is, would there be any way we could send what we have to them and see if they feel for Tuesday that this would be enough, or if they would be wanting to ask for more information, possibly to help with our conversation?
I'm gonna say, until we decide what we're gonna do, why would we send it to the Board of Supervisors?
I know they want specific line items. I just want to make sure that what we're getting is what they're looking for. And if it's not, if they want more, if it's something totally different, I was just going to make sure that we were all on the same page, basically, is what I was asking.
Well, I'm not in the mindset of, at this point, concerned about what the Board of Supervisors wants, is making sure we have what we need to make a decision when we send them the budget. And then if they have questions, it's a different conversation for them than from the information we get, because that would kind of, in my opinion, put them in a situation where they believe that they can go through our budget line by line and question what we're doing with our budget. And they're not supposed to do that. That's my take.
Okay. Did you have another question, Dr.?
Yeah, now that I have clarification, I can ask a question. So as I was going through the detailed budget, I noticed some areas of significant increase. But as I was going through, I was like, I think I figured out what this is. So particularly for personnel services, for instance, for HR services, there's a 36% increase. I was like, I think that has to do with the work that we asked for on increasing the salaries to move toward parity with the county. And I think one of the things that would be helpful is, at least for me, and I imagine for the public as well, is to see how we get to parity. So it's one thing to look down, okay, personnel, I see we're going from 694,000 to 944,000. That's $250,000. That's just like a little piece. So it's very difficult because we need to communicate to the public what it's going to take to get parity with the county for pay. Because like I said, I'm really committed to that, but we need to make sure that the public understands. So how do we get that information in this budget so that we can help to educate the public?
And you are correct. The significant increases that you're seeing in certain categories, the larger percent of the employee population in those groups are specialists and administrative assistants in some of those, so those areas are more heavily populated with those particular positions. And those were one of the salary comparisons that we presented at the last meeting. There's quite a difference in those salaries. So in looking at each of them, if you have, between 6 to 10 of that particular position in that one area, you're going to see a significant increase from one to the next. And so we did list those where our current salaries are with those salary comparisons and where we had done the recommendation of where they should be.
Yeah.
Those recommendations do get those in line with our surrounding areas in comparison to Montgomery County, as well as Salem schools, Roanoke City, I believe Roanoke County schools. So we looked at several different areas. So we do have those listed. We can certainly give you more information on those, but that's where you're going to see the larger increases. You're going to see that in some of the support services areas due to that. But that increase will allow us to be in a fairly competitive area, for each of those positions.
Okay, great. Because one of the things that I see in the summary page, the one-page summary is, for instance, for AP exams, I can see $80,000 or some of the things that we are putting in place. It's easy to see where right now it's kind of a wash unless, is it the additional personnel line? Is that what translates what you're discussing into the budget, or is that different?
That's different, actually. So the additional personnel line is just for the list of those additional positions that we were looking at. For instance, the behavior specialist, some speech therapists. There was a list of positions that were included in that presentation. So that line item, that first line item, is just for those new positions. That would be the cost to add those new positions. The second line that you see is the total compensation that across the board, and you'll see it's broke down by each category: instruction, administration, attendance, and health, and then across the board, that's where those salary increases would actually be included.
Okay. Yeah, if there was any way to be able to capture that as a line so that it's just really clear that because do you have an estimate of how much that is of the budget increase that we're asking? Because we're asking for, what is it, 12 million more? What's the total increase? I'm looking, total increase is 10 million. Right. What percentage of that 10 million is to address that?
Sure. And the total across the board is the 6,115,000. That's for total compensation for all employees.
Oh, right. I was looking at the overall budget, but
yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we could certainly give you more detail on those specific positions. If you're interested in seeing those, how that the increase as part of those positions, especially in those areas where the percentages are higher.
Okay, it might be helpful, I thought.
Sure.
Okay, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Ms. Bond? Dr. Roundtree?
Yeah, so just for clarity, we're not looking and hashing things out today. We're waiting until next Tuesday or whenever our snow makeup is. All right. I won't get into anything more than.
So you're good with the level of information that we have, maybe with the addition that Dr. Gitche was just asking for?
Correct. I think that would be a good addition. The call out of the increase on salaries to reach parity with surrounding governing bodies as a line item type item, and that would be the salary increase as well as whatever benefit increases would be on top of that. So the total.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Roberts?
That's good.
Okay. Ms. Franklin, did you have anything else?
Digesting.
Okay. And I was just kind of thinking, as others were asking Ms. Parton, I think maybe just conversations with our Board of Supervisors individually to kind of see where they are with things might kind of help direct questions and things like that. So thank you for asking for that. Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Bennett and Ms. Bland, for being here tonight and for all of the work that I know that you have done to present us with a lot of information. We have an attachment here on board docs that the public can access, but we have other information also that's been coming in that has required a great deal of thought and care. So thank you for putting all of that together. Okay. Yes.
Just a quick comment on the process of budget. Our budget is due to the county administrator or to the county February 6th, correct?
So I believe we need to vote on it at our February 3rd meeting to pass it along.
Okay. And that budget is a ceiling of what they can fund us with the state and local funding, correct? We can't ask for more money in the future,
Correct.
even if the state comes and says that they're going to increase their budget by some huge amount.
Dr. Widener is nodding and yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's where the conversations come in, so that if by chance they should, then, and we've been down that road with them before, it was like, we can't do this now, but we're hearing that this may happen, and if that may happen, then we're willing to add more to the budget, to your budget. So, you just don't close the door yet.
Right.
Okay, thank you all so much. And moving on, our next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Are there any items of unfinished business? Okay. Hearing none, our next agenda item is new business. Are there any items of new business? Any announcements or other information that board members would like to share?
So I always announce our dialogue on race, which is scheduled for this Saturday, but we will be done before the snow comes, okay? So still please show up. So we will be feeding you a good lunch too. So you can come out for that before the snow starts. Can't start until after 2 o'clock, okay? So.
Any other announcements? I believe Dr. Widener mentioned this in her superintendent report, but I just wanted to highlight again the ribbon cutting for the GoTech
Thursday.
lab. Is that the best word for it? At Christiansburg Middle School is this Thursday at 1 p.m. And that's incredibly exciting for our students and our community, if anyone is able to attend. Other announcements?
Yeah, just comment that I'd like to thank Lois Graham and the administrators at the schools that Matt Roberts and I visited a week ago, is that right? Gilbert Linkus, Harding, Margaret Beeks, Blacksburg Middle, Kips, Blacksburg High, and Price's Fork Elementary. Thank you all for the time showing us around your schools.
I'd just like to say I'm looking forward to the new superintendent. I think we'll make a great team. That's the positive attitude that I hope we can move forward with. And I would also like to thank Dr. Graham for doing a fantastic job as an interim superintendent. So.
Absolutely. Dr. Graham is on a much well-earned vacation, which she had scheduled before she knew that she would be stepping in to help us. And I'm so fortunate, or I feel so fortunate to have Dr. Widener to kind of lead us tonight and through this interim period, and really looking forward to Dr. Gimple starting as well. Yes, absolutely.
And Chair Purcell, I just
okay.
have one thing, if you don't mind, real quick.
Please, please.
So I believe this past week was a thank you to our Virginia Principals and Vice Principals Week. I just want to thank Governor Youngkin for making that a policy and bringing that to fruition and to everyone's attention, and for setting aside that week for recognizing all of our hardworking principals and vice principals. Thank you guys for everything you do. We appreciate you, our students appreciate you, and I'm just glad we had some recognition for you. You all deserve it. Thank you so much.
Just before you you announce our meetings and hit the gavel, are you sure we're allowed to finish before 10?
It's 9:45. Okay, so our upcoming school board meetings, we already discussed. We have a special budget meeting next Tuesday on January 27th. Our next regular business meeting is February 3rd, and you can see other upcoming meetings on board docs. And with no other comments, questions, or concerns, I adjourn this meeting at 9:46 p.m.